Anecdotes for success. Level up with truth, meaning, trade-offs, perspective.
All right, tonight we have a very special guest. We have Jenna Richmond on, and it's no coincidence we have the same last name. It's a blessing, maybe it's a curse. I don't know, Jenna. But welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on here with you, Dad, and Matt. It's great to be here.
So tell us about yourself. High school to college to now.
Mhm. So in high school, I always wanted to play a sport in college. I wasn't sure the level where. It's definitely a big commitment. I played travel softball since I was 8 years old, traveling all over the country. One summer we were gone for a month straight, so that was definitely challenging, but it's been quite the experience. And also just focusing on academics first, I think that can get away from a lot of people too, putting athletics over academics. But I always like to say that's why they call you a student athlete, because student comes first before athletics, and you can't get into college without good grades. So jump forward a snippet, I'm a counselor now in Virginia, and that's always something I like to say to students who want to play a sport in college, because you have to get accepted into the university and not just solely focus on athletics. I also played basketball in high school as well. And I think I always encourage students to play multiple sports, because if anything, they made me like the other sport more. So when I was playing basketball, I really like softball and softball basketball. So it just kind of a good mix, and just not that one sport all the time, because I was so committed with softball as well. So then I got recruited. The recruiting process is definitely something, a big deal. It's very stressful. I think it's more stressful than people kind of make it out to be. People always told me this is the fun part. When you get recruited, a part of that is true, but it's also very stressful, and kind of knowing where you want to go, talking to coaches, having that pressure on you. I know some tournaments that I played at, there was at least 30 college coaches watching our games. So that was always very stressful, but that's just when the mindset comes in. You can't focus on that. You just have to do your best in the moment. So fast forward, I went to play at St. Bonaventure for a year. Then I ended up transferring to University of Buffalo, where I finished out my college career. I got my undergraduate degree in 3 years. Not really sure how I fit all my classes in, but when I met with admissions, they told me I could, but that's also another part. The high school credits definitely came into play there. So I was able to play my 4th year last year while getting my master's in school counseling. And then the principal at one of the schools in Stafford County reached out to me and wanted to perform an interview. And I remember calling my mom and dad, and I was like, oh yeah, the school in Virginia wants to interview me. It's definitely for practice, and I don't know if I'm gonna get the job, but I interviewed and I did get the job, and I decided to take the big step of moving down here. But I honestly think that's something why I performed well in the interview, is because I was so relaxed about it and just had that, relaxing mindset instead of being all tensed up. And so yeah, that's what we joke about too. So now here I am, and this is my first year down here. I'm a few months in as a school counselor in a high school at Mountain View High School, and I'm also giving back and helping coaching varsity softball at Mountain View. So that will be fun. We've had a few fall ball stuff. I'm really looking forward to this spring. I think we'll have a good team. So that's a snippet of my story.
Great. That's awesome. There's so much there, Jenna. Your dad always makes fun of me for all my questions I have, but I can't help myself. I mean, there's so much there, and I'd like to back up to kind of the beginning. I was trying to remember all the things that I kept wanting to ask. One of the neat things about having you on here is you are an athlete. You were an athlete, I guess. I mean, you're all probably always identify as an athlete to some degree, but you were an athlete and you went, played at a high level and went through the recruiting and some of those things you talked about. But you also mentioned that you figure yourself as a student before an athlete. Do you attribute that to being raised in an environment where obviously academics was so important? Was that, what was that like?
Yeah, I think it definitely contributed to the environment. And my sister who plays softball too, and I always joke with my parents every year. They ask, do you still want to play softball? Like, do you still like it? And I was like, yeah, I want to still play, obviously, like thinking that's a dumb question. But looking back, I just really idolize them for that because, you see so many parents these days just forcing their kids and forcing them to put in all that effort. And at the end of the day, it's your life. And I just think sometimes people don't realize all the grind it takes, especially to play at the higher level or at any level for that fact. I mean, Division III athletes work just as hard, if not harder. So I definitely think it was the environment, and to get a bad grade was not okay in my house. I mean, like one here and there was okay, but they let it slide. But just always focusing on academics but I think that just came from my inner self too. Like, I never wanted to get a bad grade either. And, just knowing that if my grades aren't good, then I'm not going to give myself those opportunities to be able to play at a higher level, I think was important too. So.
Yeah, no, I was curious about that. I'm also curious about, you touched on, you played basketball, you played softball. Did you play any other sports?
No, just those two.
Okay. Those two. It's the point though still being, you hear so much today about kids getting pushed in one direction, right? Especially at a young age. Oh, I mean, you were a talented softball player early on, and it sounds like it's common that a lot of times kids will get pushed. You got to give up the basketball. You got to give up the band. You got to give up everything else. You're going to be a softball player or whatever. Obviously that wasn't really done to you, but then I certainly hear the other side of it, how important it is to have those other experiences. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I personally feel like if I just played softball, and I obviously love the sport with my entire life. I mean, I played it until up to this year, but I really think I would have started to burn out at an earlier age because it's like we went every day. We had high school in the fall, we had travel in the fall on the weekends. We had winter conditioning. We had high school season in the spring. Then right when high school is over, you jump into travel. So it's really all year, never ending. And I mean, travel's still, and if not more rigorous with their schedule, just trying to get people recruited. So I always looked, at basketball as, I mean, I loved the sport, but even on the days where I was like, I don't know, I'm like, well, I'm conditioning for softball. Like, this is just another form of conditioning, when I look at it like that.
Did you find that it helped you perform in a way that you wouldn't have performed if you hadn't played it? You know what I mean? Whether it's conditioning, whether it's strength training, agility, I don't know, pick something. But yeah. Did you find a crossover in that sense?
Definitely. I remember in high school, because basketball ended, then that Saturday, I think we lost in regionals. I remember my sophomore year, and softball tryout started Monday. And I went into softball tryouts, and my coach was like, you can relax for a minute. I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm ready to go, because I felt so in shape from basketball. And I mean, our program in high school, you ran a lot, which isn't always a bad thing. I mean, we were so in shape and conditioned, but I remember being one of the first one in the conditioning races, because, you have that one day of tryouts where you just do all conditioning and agility stuff. And I remember my scores had never been so high. And I mean, it's hard to say if that would have been the same if I did, had like a personal trainer and worked out instead of that basketball season. But I mean, I just liked it better because, you don't think of it every day as conditioning. You think of it just playing a different sport instead of being like, oh, I have to wake up at 7 and go to conditioning. Instead, you think of it as, oh, well, I'm going to basketball practice and getting the conditioning that way. So I definitely think it contributed a lot.
So then you start getting recruited. At what point does that start?
So it's getting younger and younger. I mean, I know my dad knows we knew a girl and, get some of them at the top schools get recruited in 8th, 9th grade. I mean, not officially, but, verbal to that school, we call it. It gets really intense. I can't really speak on other sports, but I think it's pretty the same across the board. Junior year is really big. And, that's usually the toughest year academically because you're finishing out a lot of your core classes. So, a lot of students like to have their easier senior year. And then you have to take the SAT, ACT, and just, kind of look. That's when I really buckled down and started looking at colleges a little bit sophomore year, but I wasn't as, like I have to. But I almost feel like that pressure comes too, like, oh, all my friends are getting recruited. I have to start getting recruited, and really it's just about you as an individual, and the colleges will see you when they do, and you just have to trust the process, like my dad always says, but it is true. You just do have to trust it and, just advocate for yourself, email coaches, go talk to them, and yeah, it's just a lot, but I luckily found my home, so.
Right, so when you were in, your dad knows the answer to these questions, so I'm trying to ignore them. But I don't. I don't know these answers. But I'm always been very curious about. I never was in that position. My daughter wasn't in that position. I haven't been through it the way you guys have, but I've often certainly wondered about it. How much did academics play in two ways? Your choice, the choice you wanted to make, and also the choices you were given. Like how important were your grades in the process to the schools, and how important was the school's academics important to your choice? You see what I'm saying? I'm going both ways. Okay. Yeah,
definitely. Just speaking off of St. Bonaventure, because that's originally where I got recruited, and originally where I went my first year. They have one of the best education programs in the country, which is, I was always looking for schools. Like if a school was looking at me, emailed me, first thing I looked at, do they have my major? No, then.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Jenna, but you knew the whole time you wanted to be in education in some sort.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know exactly what, but I just looked at, did they have? Well, at first I wanted to be a special education teacher, so I was really looking at good teaching schools. And then just kind of counseling fields, kind of just stuff in that category, because usually hand in hand at colleges, So that's always the first thing I looked at. If I got an email from a coach, I remember I sat down and I was like, do they have my major? If not, then, what would I just always had the mentality, I'm not going to change my major or what I want to do based on, where I'm getting recruited, because I just always put my academics first. And
right.
At the end of the day, your sport will end, and then what are you going to do? Softball's not professional. Well, there is some professional, but it's not, like football and stuff like that. So that's what I was just thinking of, at the end of the day, what am I going to be happy doing when my sport does end? So, but I definitely took that into consideration for sure.
And so then you took that into consideration. How much consideration did St. Bonaventure or Buffalo or anybody else take your grades and your SATs, or was it all kind of secondary to your performance on the field?
No,
or don't you know? Maybe you don't even know.
I think they definitely took into consideration my grades. I know, for example, like if you play, big time football, it probably goes out the window more. Like, you know what I mean? It's just but at St. Bonaventure and at Buffalo, they both asked about my grades before recruiting me. You have to put in your transcripts, and it's actually cool because now I'm seeing the other end of it, because as a counselor in the high school, I'm in charge of the NCAA stuff, like uploading transcripts, and I actually sat through a webinar today for it to inform myself, because I'm like, oh, it's different on like not what all my counselors did and like how that process works. And it's cool because now I feel like I've seen both angles of it, and I can also, when students come in, I can touch on the player's perspective too, and then how it goes on my end. Because honestly, like when I was like, I don't know what's happening. I just know that coach is interested in me,
Of course.
But they definitely both asked about my grades, and the NCAA has that like sliding scale for GPA. So if you have a higher SAT score, you can have a lower GPA. definitely
Oh,
it like that, and they always check for eligibility. But I think now you have to have a 2.3 to be eligible, but that's like mainly what they care about. It's not like, you have to have all A's, but I definitely think it plays a role, or they like it too. And definitely when you're in school, I think when you're at the school, it plays way more of a role because they want that team GPA to be high to reflect good on the program. I know at Buffalo, we had free tutoring services available to all student athletes. You just went online, 2 clicks, and I could have a chemistry tutor, which is really nice. It was really nice because all other students, I heard it was mayhem trying to get a tutor because obviously University of Buffalo is a giant school. So that was really nice too. And we would have, weekly meetings with our academic advisor, especially our first year. We had a certain amount of study hours we had to complete. So I think it plays more of a role when you're actually at the school versus beforehand. And beforehand, I feel like it's kind of just making sure you're eligible to play, if that makes sense.
right, of course.
Do you think I think, there's a big difference between the revenue sports and the non-revenue sports with the GPAs, don't you think sometimes? Like
Yeah.
the teams that are making all the money, and listen, firsthand, there's a ton of great student athletes in any sport, football, basketball.
Yeah.
But I think there's a little bit different of an expectation with the sports that don't make the money.
Definitely. I also think it's about the team culture and environment too. Because I remember my first year at Buffalo, I don't want to say it wasn't a high expectation to get grades, but it's kind of like, if you aren't doing the best, it's like, it's okay. But towards my last year, when we had a great team culture, my 3 coaches were amazing. It was that expectation to do that. You were expected to get high grades. If you did get failing grades, they would find out because your professors have to send an academic progress report in. So they would call you out on it and be like, what's going on in this class? So I definitely think it kind of depends on the coaching staff and the culture the other members of the team set, because we were really good student athletes, especially my senior year. I think we had one of the highest GPAs in program history. So it definitely depends on the culture, I would say too, as do a lot of things. So
Sure. Now, I'm as your dad knows, I'm a big believer in relationships. I'm a relationship kind of, they matter so much. When you were going through the recruiting process in particular, how much did relationships influence your decision, whether it was with the head coach or whoever was spending their time recruiting you, as well as any other people you knew who were playing on the team or going to play on the team?
So going back to Bonaventure, and I keep jumping back and forth, but that's just where I originally got recruited.
Right.
I, obviously met with the head coach and assistant coach first. I kind of just like the way they set the tone for things, but I also was kind of looking more for, how do the girls interact, because I just feel like that's a bigger factor. I mean, obviously coaching sets a big role, but, you obviously see the girls interact with them every day versus more of the coaching as like an authority figure. And I knew the girls in my class coming into Bonaventure. I met my roommate and I absolutely love them. I still stay in touch with 2 of them now every day, even though I only went there a year, and some of the other girls on the team, because when I went on my official visit, I met everybody and I stayed in the dorm with one of them, and everyone just clicked so well, I think. And, just no one thought they were better than anyone else. I mean, sometimes you have like 1 or 2 outliers, but I mean, it's a team of girls. Like, what do you expect?
You said it, not us.
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone would agree to that. Girls is a lot, especially on a big roster. But in terms of Buffalo, it was, I really did not. I met the head coach, Coach Roberts, who ended up not being the head coach when I was there, but he's the one that called me and kind of got my transferring, process started. And then the assistant coach took over. So I said like, hi to him when I met with them at VUB. I didn't know any of the girls on the team, and, but I'm kind of one to, can't tell I'm at Virginia now, but makes more spontaneous decisions and just step outside my comfort zone in that aspect. And I'm so happy I went to Buffalo. It was one of the best decisions ever. So, but yeah, and it ended up working out so well. So
Good. Now, Paul, you've got two daughters, both who played high-level college athletics. I mean, that's pretty unique. And as a parent in that kind of whole process from beginning to end, was it similar? Was it really different? I mean, what was that like as a dad through that? It must have been exciting in a lot of ways.
Well, it's crazy because, they're only a year apart in school. They're a couple more months than that, Jenna and Allie. But they're so different in many ways, right, Jenna?
Yeah, I would say it was different.
But they're so similar in many ways, and they're probably each other's, even through the high school years. I mean, the stories come out now. They were each other's biggest fans and supporters. And you talk about relationships, and I think that the neatest thing for me as a parent, and my wife would say the same thing, is how much support they had for each other. And it would always bother us to this day if people try to say, "Oh, who's the better player? Who's the better basketball player?" You can't answer a question like that. That they both complement each other so well, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Like, there's no point in even answering a question like that, because they bring out the best in each other. And while maybe when they were little, they brought out the worst in each other a little bit. But
I think
but
Allie and I would answer those questions more honestly. I'd be like, yeah, Allie's way better at dribbling. Like, I'm not good, or I'm way better at shooting.
yes,
But
we would focus on how they complement each other. But it's funny looking back. It was we didn't think we were doing anything special or different. I think what we pride ourselves the most on is we'd ask them every year if they wanted to keep playing.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was interesting.
I think that gets lost. I see it now. I mean, I coach high school sports. I'm still around the travel scene a bit. Everybody loves it, but if you're never introduced to other experience, and Jenna can answer this in a minute, if you're never introduced to other experiences along the way, I I think the fear of missing out comes into play. So if it's all one sport, one sport, one sport, or just all sports, 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 or maybe it's all music or band or whatever, if you don't get a chance to explore, especially in those teen years, I don't think it's really called burnout. I think it's just you want to start trying new things. What do you think, Jenna?
yeah, I would say trying new things, but I also think I would personally just call it burnout because I've seen it with some of my friends. Just they're like, I don't like it anymore. I've been, so I've been doing this sport every single day since I was 8, and that's it. I've never got, and I mean, travel softball is crazy and it's so commitment. I'm sure other sports are too, but I'm just keep speaking to softball because that's my experience. But I mean, like summers were, that was it. Like my team was my friends. Like, you know what I mean? We're gone every single weekend. It's not like I could go hang out with my friends on the weekends, which I wouldn't trade for the world. Like looking back now, like they were my best friends. It was such a good experience. But if that's just what you do, and then you have that added pressure of what your parents are putting on you and that added pressure to trying to get recruited, it is a lot. And I think that's sometimes where people don't realize definitely all that goes into it, because from an outside perspective, it's like, oh, that's awesome. Why wouldn't they want to play a sport in college if they have the opportunity to? Like, why wouldn't they want to do that? Like, I've had some people so stunned why I didn't take my COVID year this year, because I could have been playing this year in my 5th year of COVID. And I'm just like, I always answer with, well, I already have my master's degree and I don't want to go to school for just cause. And I kind of already had that planned out, but I just have had some people so stunned at why I wouldn't want to play another year, and just not seeing what goes into it every single day is something that I think people miss out on for sure.
Two questions. We'll piggyback with that. Do you think you've played on several? I mean, you've played on a lot of sports teams growing up. You played on several travel teams. Do you think it helped out back in the day when you could be on a team where you had the flexibility to do other things besides the tournament, go visit sites, go to a water park on your day off? I mean, et cetera, et cetera.
Definitely. That saved me. I mean, for softball, you play sometimes 4 games in a day. You're so exhausted in the 100-degree weather in Florida. But again, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was so great to have those experiences, and I'm so thankful my parents gave me those experiences. But yeah, it was very nice to just kind of go hang out with the team, go whitewater rafting in Colorado, go to a Red Rocks concert in Colorado, just go to Disney World in Florida, like definitely those days. And that's, I mean, a lot of the memories came from there too. So I think that was big.
Looking back, I mean, if you could go back in time to being in high school again, do you think the average, and maybe I shouldn't say the average, did you think in high school you had any idea what playing a college sport and trying to do well in academics and even pursuing your master's while you're playing? Did you have any idea what that experience would really be like?
I mean, I had an idea, but it's definitely, I mean, it's all so much about time management. When I would laugh, my friends and I would laugh because when recruits would come in and they're like, you know, a typical question, what's the hardest part about being a Division I athlete? And we always go finding time to eat. That's the hardest part ever. Like, so, like it really is, but it's about time management. And I mean, just you have so many supports, especially at Division I and Division II level. You have so many supports. I really don't see a valid reason why you should not be able to, you know, do your academics. While it is hard, it is very hard, but you just have so many supports, especially nowadays with all the money that's involved too, and just having those tutors. And I know some teams have tutors travel with them even. And but yeah, I mean, I had like a little bit of an idea, but it's hard until you get there. Freshman year is definitely the hardest to adjust for sure.
So what, now that you've been through it and you're out of school and onto your career, what did you take? What are you taking from it still that is helping you in life moving forward?
Time management and being flexible. I mean, practices always got canceled, games delayed, flights delayed, the class canceled, just like a bunch of chaos. And that's really my life as a school counselor. You know, you go in one day and you have a plan, and it never follows the plan because, you know, someone could come in crying, and you have certain stuff you're supposed to have done by a certain time. And just being able to manage your time and being flexible, I still use that every single day. And that really helped me being able to play sport in college. I didn't have all that free time. You know, if you don't play a sport, you have your weekends, you have, you know, you don't have practices. I mean, I'm sure people do clubs and extracurriculars and stuff, but definitely those two are really big that I still use to this day.
Free time's a killer in a lot of ways, isn't it? I mean, it'll suck up your time. You'll spend so much time on nonsense. You know, what's the old adage? I forget. There's someone who's given credit for it. I don't even know who it is, but it was. It's if you want something done, give it to the busiest person in the room, which I find to be very true. The busier I am, the more I get done. You know, the more I'm focused, and I'm generally pretty good at time management as well. And I had to learn to be. Yeah. And I find that to be a very important skill that you can learn that allows you to get way more done than you'd otherwise get done.
Definitely. I found myself being the most productive sometimes when we are traveling, because, you know, you're sitting in the airport and you're like, crap, I have to get this done because we have a flight. Like, I have no other choice than to do this right now. Whereas I know I procrastinate. My dad can answer to that in high school. Procrastinator, like, no question. I'm not even sugarcoating it. And I'd be like, oh, I don't have to do it yet. And it honestly helped me a lot. I probably got better grades playing a sport in college. But
I always say, like, listen, we all procrastinate, especially if it's something that we don't think's a priority to ourselves. But I think you've realized that there's things you just have to get done. And when you step outside your comfort zone and just realize you have to do it, sometimes you just tackle it ahead of time. I mean, there's always something you're going to wait to the last minute, but don't you feel like, and I don't mean to speak for you, but you'll get things done sometimes early because you just know it makes your life easier.
Sometimes I did find myself doing that, but I think it's also just based on people's personalities too. Like, I honestly probably did some of my best work when I sat in the airport and did it. And because you just focus on that, you're like, I have to do it now. Like for me personally, if I was like, oh, I don't have to hand this assignment in for 4 weeks, I maybe type 3 words, go get a snack, type 3 words, but yeah, I know that's more Allie, but there are some times, where that did come into play, but it's just about managing it and just being able to get it done when it's due, I think is the biggest thing. So, and just knowing it's okay, like you are going to have times where you are waiting until the very last minute, but.
So I'm sorry, Jenna. So I'm curious, how do you go from, since you're 8 years old, it's travel, softball all the time, it's sports, it's academics, it's busy. High school, obviously busy. College, you're busy the whole time. You're working, you get your master's, you're going through all this. There's constant goals to be reached, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's games to be played. There's degrees to earn. There's all these things to achieve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which wonderful for you. I mean, you've done remarkably well. Now here you are. You get then the next thing is to get a job, which in your field, which you do. Boom. What is someone who's gone through all those things in such a short period of time, with so much to accomplish? In short chunks too. Now you look ahead and you go, what's next? Do you give that any thought? Do you how are you looking at it? Maybe you're not even looking at it, which is okay too. I'm just curious, because you've done a lot in a short period of time and always had something to go for. Now what?
Yeah, definitely. I get that a lot as well, but honestly right now, because it was a lot coming in, and I started working the week of July 19th, so it was very hectic starting a new job and just getting situated in the school. If I'm being honest, because most people when they start a full-time job, they're busier, but I've never had more free time. I have every weekend off. I have time. I go to the gym after work, and I'm like, wow. So right now I'm kind of just relaxing and just kind of taking a deep breath, because last year was so hectic for me. I mean, COVID, getting my master's, playing 56 games, like it was a lot. So right now I'm just kind of just taking a deep breath, and I'm really the type of person too, I would consider myself to live in the moment. So, I just always set small goals for myself. Like, what am I going to accomplish at work today? What am I going to accomplish at the gym today? And I mean, I'm still involved. I'm the assistant varsity coach for Mountain View. We have stuff once or twice a week. So I still am involved in that aspect. So, and I know the sport isn't gone forever too, just knowing that. I mean, they reached out to me to help coach like right away. So, but
I would understand why. Yeah, with your background, it makes a lot of sense. They'd be stupid if they didn't.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to focus on doing the best in my job right now, I would say, and just being able to adjust to that, because it was a little overwhelming at first. But I mean, I have the best support group at my school too, which helps a lot. And I mean, one day, I don't know what my future holds, but I'm sure once if I'm ready to move on and set a new goal, then I can do that. But until then, I'm just kind of just taking a deep breath after all of that. So.
Yeah.
So Matt, she's not kidding when she says she just kind of lives in the moment, waits to see what happened. I mean, what's the nickname? What do we call you in the household?
They call me a tumbleweed because I just let the wind blow me wherever.
That's funny. It's actually funny because you've done a lot, and I mean, obviously, well, when you're talking about your last year when you're playing 56 games and working on a master's degree, and all that goes in during a pandemic and all that goes into that, like that's not someone who's just willy-nilly, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and then you have that kind of the other part of your life that you go, hey, you said it, you like to live in the moment and enjoy, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. I just wondered if you were like, I want to be a varsity head coach at a high school someday, or I want to be a school administrator, or something like that, or if you're just, like you said, kind of taking a little bit of a breath and going, gonna kind of settle and see where life takes me.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, they joke about the tumbleweed thing, haha, all the time. And I mean, I embrace it because I really think that's what helped me got through last year. Like, obviously, I have goals for myself. I'm not just like, oh, whatever happens. But like, I always just lived in the day. I'm like, what do I have to do today? Like, I didn't, if I thought about, oh my gosh, we have six games next week. How am I going to get through? I probably would have lost my mind. I really so I really just tried to live by the day and like, what do I have to do today? Like, what am I going to accomplish today? And it really helped me a lot, me personally. And, I'm just taking, like you said, it's going to take this like either semester or year to just kind of relax, get situated. So I continue to succeed at my job and then just reassess and see, if I am thinking about moving on to, like an administrator or something else in the future. So
I see.
I guess there's a real difference between a true, like somebody that just literally has no goals and just lets the wind blow them around, or somebody that just accepts there's so many external forces happening that I'm gonna get blown around, but I can still try to find my direction and work hard and get through the day, right? So I guess you're a tumbleweed with an asterisk.
There you go. That can be my new nickname.
Well, and let's face it, there's different points in our life, where we happen to be, and you might be a tumbleweed for a year, and then a year later you might be a tiger because you got exactly where you want to go, and
Exactly.
which is I'm sure your dad feels. I've been in different points in my life as well where my mindset's just different. It depends on where I'm at with my life and what's going on. But I was curious if you had any goals within your career, like I said, administrator or something like that. Again, a little bit going back to what your how you grew up and your parents' jobs and those kinds of things. I wondered how much of that had rubbed off on you and some of those things.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I know I was talking to my parents about this, I think it'd be really cool to work with athletes someday too and just help them and help that mental game and mental perspective, because that's such a big part of it now. I mean, it always has been, but just, just having that self-esteem and just being able to have that mentality going into your game that you are the tiger and you're going to succeed. And so I think that would be cool in the future too, just helping athletes out.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that, because one of the things I was going to ask is, we talk about our 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is perspective, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask is what kind of what's your perspective now that you're out of the day to day, high level Division I athlete versus when you were in it? I mean, has your perspective changed in any profound way?
I don't know if my perspective necessarily changes. I just consider it continues to expand my perspective. Definitely, I would not change it for the world. I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to play a Division I sport and just all the memories and my best friends for life that I've made. But definitely, it's a lot day by day. I mean, you have conditioning, lifts, 3-hour practice, and you're supposed to fit class in there, and time to eat, and socialization. And it's just really a lot, and it's a lot to wrap your head around, and especially if you do kind of start questioning yourself and it's like, well, is this worth it? Do I like it? I think that's where athletes could benefit from, some mental perspective and stuff like that. But I am seeing it kind of on an outside perspective now. Like when I watch the high school girls practice, I'm like, wow, that was me. And then they go to travel practice and I'm like, wow, that was me. So it's just like the tables have definitely turned, but I don't necessarily see my perspective is changing, but also it depends on the program you're in and what your goals are and stuff like that as well. So
How hard was it when you're so busy to shift mindset? Like if you have a bad day at class, or maybe you have a bad day with a friend, or you have a bad day at practice, how hard or is it hard to just shift gears and go to the next activity right away, or you get hurt lifting or something like that?
yeah, I mean, I was in an FCA group in college, and it's just, you know, student athletes who have that spirituality and believe in God. So I'd go to that every Sunday.
What's
And
FCA stand for?
a Fellowship Christian Athletes. Sorry. And that honestly helped me so much. It was any athletes at UB that was spiritual and go. And I'll never forget this one week we talked about, like, the leader said, why do you get so frustrated if you have a bad practice? That's just one part of your life. So I always think about that. If I had a bad day at practice, because obviously it happened, and I was like, wow, that was really terrible. And then I went to class. I'm like, softball is just one part of my life. I'm just like, let's focus on the next part. Like, okay, I had a bad day, but let's not let it go into a big snowball and roll down a hill and just have a crappy day, and vice versa. If I like bombed a test or something, I'm like, okay, well, that stunk. That was bad, but now I'm going to perform well at practice and look at this new aspect of my life. And I just thought of it like that. They're different aspects of my life, and that one thing didn't define me as a person who I am. Because if you think you're always going to succeed at everything, God bless. But just kind of looking at it as different aspects of my life, I would just think of my day in kind of chunks. So just kind of tackling what was ahead of me, and if something did go wrong, which did, just knowing that, you know, okay, let's not let it tumble throughout the day. Let's pick it back up and have a positive note somewhere. So
That's awesome advice. That really is. That's incredible. That's advice everyone could take. I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I could be better. And I mean it sincerely. I could be better at that as well. It's really important to understand.
One thing that kind of just irritates me is when if someone spills their coffee in the morning, they're like, well, my day's a wash. Like, my day's a waste. I'm like, why? Like, why is it a waste? You just had that one thing. Okay, it's over with. Let's just do something positive. Like, let's turn it around. Like, just because one thing happens, there's no point that you have to have a terrible bad day, because then you're going to wake up and be like, well, yesterday stunk. And then you're already in that negative mindset for the next day. And that's just how I think of it. And I don't, like, there's no time for that. So
I like that. So you try to keep every situation independent of one another, and then really, whether they're good or bad, they're going to compound. So you could have one bad and three good, and you compound to have a good day. You could have three bad and six good, you're going to have a good day. And I think people sometimes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. This first time they have something bad happen, they're like, here we go. And then it just, that mindset compounds, and you can turn it around.
Well, Jenna, that's one of the nice things I would think about being an athlete is you get an opportunity to succeed and fail a lot, day in and day out, you know, practice games, even, you know, things like your workouts and that kind of thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of measurements that go on there, and I'm a big believer in success and especially failure. And because of what it does for your mindset, right? And then your ability to understand that failure today at practice doesn't make Jenna a failure. It means you didn't have the best day at practice. You're going to go after again tomorrow, and that kind of thing. And I think far too many people don't have an opportunity to fail enough or to compete, whether it's on the athletic field, in the classroom, you know, in music and art, whatever it happens to be. They don't compete enough. So when they do fail, it's monumental to them, right? And it can really just crush them. And when you're in a position like you, when you're just constantly competing and with some form, which means you're going to fail a lot, you get to put it in perspective and go, hey, look, I had a bad day today, or a bad, even better what you said, I had a bad practice. Now I'm going to go do well on this test, or whatever the case may be. And you really get to see it for what it's worth. You're not a failure because you lost the game or gave up a home run or whatever it is. You had you failed in that particular moment. Time to move on and be better going forward. And it's one of the things that I just love about athletics. It gives you that ability to go and realize that these things are they're not over. It's just that one, and now it's on to the next one. And I think that really helps people mentally in anything they do going forward. And it's one of the reasons that I'm such a proponent of athletes in particular, is because you get so much of that, and you don't have to, and I'm sure you would agree, you don't have to be a Division I athlete. You don't have to be a college athlete. You don't have to be the best player on your high school team. You can come off the bench. You still get these moments, and that's where the real value is for most athletes. Not for other people who really get to move on. They get, good for them. They get to continue to do those things. But even if you're not the best in the best out there, I think those things are super important. I've always believed very heavily in that.
Yeah, I mean, softball is a sport, jokingly, why would you do it? You fail more than you succeed. Like, if you have a 333 batting average, that's great, but that's not even you getting on base once every 2 times. So that's the joke. But also, I don't want, people to think that it was always just that easy mindset. Like, sometimes I would be really upset, and I'm like, wow, that was just really bad. Like, or if the day, go back to practice, like, that was just really bad. And someone told me this, and it was the best thing that anyone's ever said to me. One of the things, like, it's okay to allow yourself to be upset, or allow yourself, like, you don't have to just ignore it. So sometimes I would literally set a 5-minute timer on my phone and say, okay, I'm going to complain for 5 minutes. I mean, my dad can attest this. On car rides home from games, we'd have a 5-minute, excuse my language, bitch session, we would call it. And me and my sister would go off for 5 minutes, like, just completely complain about everything. And then once that 5 minutes is up, okay, let's move on. And I would let myself do that mentally too. I'm like, okay, I'm going to be upset for 5 minutes about what just happened, and then I'm going to let it go and then transfer over and move on. And it's great because it allows yourself to be upset, but it doesn't let you carry it throughout the whole day and on to the next day. So that was great. But yeah.
Yeah, I remember those. And mom and dad weren't allowed to talk because there was no like, yeah, but this, or it's okay. It's just unfiltered go. And when success isn't linear. Like, we could say all that stuff, but I heard something the other day that success is more like a spiral that just keeps moving upwards. And every time you go backwards in the spiral, that's the failure, right? That's the bitch fest. That's the learning from the bad experience or the bad day. And then if you use it right, it rockets you up to the next level. And it's just this continuously. Pardon my,
We get it. We get it.
But I used that example a while ago with walking up the stairs with a yo-yo. Like, the day to day can just be so crazy, the ups and downs and ups and downs. And as long as you have the time to release and reset and learn, it's going to compound for good stuff in the long term. And sometimes you don't even know what it might bring you, right?
Yeah.
In most cases.
So, Jenna, you're a retired athlete now. Most people don't get to retire till they're 50 or 60. You retired at 22. Congrats.
I just look at it as a chapter ending, new one beginning.
Well, now it's time for my little Wayne, Matt. Every finish line's the start of the new race.
Here we go.
And it's a big Justin Bieber fan. I'm a big Lil Wayne fan. So
you wouldn't guess it, would you?
I can see it.
Couple old guys like us.
Matt's a believer.
Oh my gosh.
So come on, tell us one thing you miss about the whole experience a year. I mean, I'm hoping there's something.
One miss about, like,
college, softball, any of it.
I would say just that bond with my teammates and coaches, and just honestly, like, the practices when we just joke around and do funny stuff. I was obviously, like, I practiced with the outfielders because I was an outfielder, and we kind of practiced in groups and just joking around. And if someone made an error, like, we would just laugh at them. I mean, unless it was all the time, then you'd probably get in trouble. But it's like here and there, and just like joking around with the coaches. And we always had like music playing at practices, and just that, especially my last year. Like, last year, it was a really positive environment. And I do miss that, and just the memories that I built with my teammates. And yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Just, in the locker room was always funny before games, like the bus rides, the plane rides. Like, we'd always make a scene of some sort, I feel like, on our 4 a.m. flight. But just kind of making memories and stuff, definitely.
Isn't that the interesting thing about relationships? If you can grow with them, that sometimes you remember the stuff that almost doesn't have anything to do with the goal you're trying to complete. It's just the little moments and the fact that people have your back and you have theirs, and you could go into any situation with them, and they know they have your back.
It's so much, I often say this, it's what I've found to be true anyway. It's not what I'm doing, it's who I'm doing it with so often. And I think that's what you were hitting on there, Jenna. It's like, and those relationships, and I guarantee you that the relationships you've made, 30 years from now, there's gonna be people that you're doing things with, talking with, enjoying things with, and probably some with people you thought you'd never, you might never see again. Life's funny like that, but it's so much about everything. It's about people. It really is. And it's such a unique experience you had for most people. And I think anyone who's played sports would be envious of what how long you're able to do it at what level. And that says a lot about obviously the work you put in and the talent you have and those kinds of things. But even that, it's funny to hear or interesting to hear what you look back on are the practices and the joking with your teammates and the 4 a.m. flights and those kinds of things. It just, it really puts it in perspective of what people really value at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you miss the early morning lifts?
Not too much. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I like it. I do miss, I motivate myself to go and work out, but I do miss, okay, I have to go work out right now. You obviously have a trainer who you always are going to be pushed by someone more than you're pushed by yourself. But yeah, I don't know. There's a positive about everything in there. So.
Mm-hmm.
Last question. Any advice to high school athletes or somebody getting ready to go to college on what they could do to help themselves out?
I would just say, make sure you're still passionate about it and make sure it's something you love to do, because I always say, getting recruited is the easy part, but lasting through the program and being there every day is harder. I mean, getting recruited is hard too, but, just being there every day is the hard part, and just, focus on that day by day and make memories, and it goes by quick. So before you know it, you'll be retired like me. So, and just, enjoy every moment, even when you fail, and just know the success will come, and that just goes for anything. I would say.
That's a great mindset for just moving forward with everything ahead in your life now, with your career now, or whatever else you pursue in the future. We forget that, don't we, Matt? Not me and you. I mean, other people.
Us too. Yes, we do forget that.
Yeah.
Jenna, thank you. This was great. This was the longest I've Zoomed with you in a long time and seen you. So maybe you have to be on every week now.
It was an honor. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, thanks. We'll talk to you guys soon.